Myra Gut poet Mrs. Helen C. MacDonald in her poem The Mira River has stated, "The Mira is more than a river. It's a tale from the past. Each winding curve has a story that shall forever last." The tale or story of the Mira River is a very interesting one. Let us take a look at the people and places of the Mira and areas where we came from and what these communities were like many years ago. To start our tale, let us begin with our school. Albert Bridge School was opened in January 1959, once having grades primary to 10, but since the construction of Catalone School and opening of Malcolm Monroe School in 1974, the school has had grades 4 to 6. You, the students, come from a 300-kilometer square area stretching from Hills Road to the Louisbourg town limits, and from the Atlantic Ocean at Myra Gut, 20 kilometers on both sides of the Mira River toward Merriam Bridge. There is not a student in this school who is not affected by the Mira River. You either live close to it or drive across it when you go to school or to Sydney. The river is the most prominent part of nature in most of the communities you live in. The name Mira is either Portuguese or French. The Portuguese fished the river before the French. There is a Mira River in Portugal, and legend has it that homesick Portuguese named the river after their own. The French version credits Officer de Meyer with naming the river. The river is approximately 50 kilometers long and is the only river in Canada that can be traveled by boat from one end to the other. Once spanned by 5 bridges, Victoria Bridge is the only original bridge still standing. It is believed they were named after the builders' children, Victoria, Marion, and Albert, although some think Victoria and Albert were named after the royal family. Let us look back at the long and eventful tale of the Mira River. Micmac Indians camped on the shores of the Mira River, and the river played an important part in their lives for transportation, food, washing, and recreation. It is quite possible that Indian war canoes glided over the Mira many years ago. Soon after the French arrived at Louisbourg in 1713, they cut a road some 15 kilometers to the Mira River to cut timber for houses at Louisbourg. The timber was hauled back by oxen. The French settlers called Acadians were good farmers. They settled along the river and farmed, fished, and sold their fish in Louisbourg to be traded in many parts of the world. The Acadians were happy and secure along the Mira, but in 1745 the British successfully attacked Louisbourg, burned Acadian homes, and took Acadians prisoner. Some French escaped and hid with the Micmacs to return after peace was restored. In July 1758, the French were defeated at Louisbourg and lost control of Mira. In 1783, people who were loyal to the British in the American Revolution left the United States, and some were given grants of land along the river. These people, known as Loyalists, stayed, and for a living they farmed, built boats, and fished. On June 15, 1867, Nehemiah Martell of Myra Gut wrote in his diary, "A stranger has appeared in the Mira Bay in the shape of a small steamer, the first steam vessel to be seen here." After many years of sailing vessels, canoes, and rowboats, steamers would now be a familiar sight on the Mira. In 1895, the first locally owned boat, the SS Juliet, was purchased by the Phillips and Nickel firm. The firm operated from 1900 till 1929. Other boats purchased were the Vista, the Marietta, and Volunda. The Avonlea, purchased in 1913, was a 20-meter double-decker vessel which could carry up to 120 passengers. A A tugboat, the SS Volunda, was built at Mira to tow scows carrying pit timber, lumber, coal, hay, supplies for country stores, and bricks. They towed the scows the whole length of the river, where cargoes could be loaded or offloaded from flat cars at the S&L railway station at Mira Gut. The first stop would be at the Albert Bridge. Passenger services were continued in the summer months by gas-powered boats Miss Mira and Miss Mira II from 1929 until 1958. However, better car and truck transportation meant that river freight was not hauled after 1929. In this slide you will see the advertisement for the passenger boat SS Alameda, which was owned by Lou Petrie, who we will hear more about later. Some of our older residents can recall a trip on the Phillips and Nichols steamer where they would approach what was then a drawbridge at Albert Bridge. 3 short blasts came from the steamer, and the drawkeeper would open the bridge. A section of the bridge would swing sideways, and the steamer sailed through the narrow opening. Also, if the steamer had a passenger or parcel to deliver to a home, the steam whistle would signal, and someone from the home would run out to pick up the person or parcel. Today, only recreational motor boats and canoes ply the Mira River, passengers often being residents of the many summer cottages. The Mira River is not without its legends. About a kilometer from Mira Gut is believed to be the site of an old pirate shipyard. In a canyon hidden by 15-meter cliffs is where some believe is a place where pirates towed their prizes they captured and repaired their vessels and cannons. When weapons were improved so the canyon could no longer protect the pirates, it is believed they left, probably around 1810. Let us travel the furthest point, up the north shore of the river, where the students of our school live, Hillside Road. One of the Loyalist families who came to Hillside was the family of James Hill. Mrs. Hill's father was Reverend Rannicosset, first rector of St. George's Church in Sydney. It is believed that both Hills Road and Hillside Road were named after the family. Early Scottish settlers were Mathesons, MacDonalds, Monroes, MacLeods, Morrisons, and later McKeegans. Postal service was handled much of the time by the McKeegan family, the last being Mrs. Edna McKeegan, who held the position at this house from 1942 until the post office moved to Marion Bridge. The Hillside School was referred to as the number 28 school, and in this slide you can see what it looked like in 1937. Past the school is Gessner's Point, the property owned by the MacDonald family. A pioneer cemetery is located on a plot of land overlooking the river. Cape Breton Dean was once a part of the old Hill Grant. The land was later purchased from the Hills family by Christ Church in Sydney to be used as a camp. Also on the property is a cemetery believed to be the resting place of members of the Macaulay family, one of the earlier owners of the land. An IOGT hall was also located on this property in the late 1800s. This organization was dedicated to preventing abuse of alcohol. The Mira Boat Club was formed in 1947 with a membership of 17. In 1949, the club purchased its land and constructed a clubhouse and reviewing stand. Races, although once held frequently, are no longer organized by the club, although in the summer months you can still see many boat enthusiasts at the club. Across from the boat club is the site of an early school closed in the 1920s. In 1921, the residents of Hillside and Caribou Marsh formed a mutual telephone company. This was done in many areas of Mira. The line was owned by those who had telephones, and they were also responsible to repair and maintain the lines. In this slide, you will see the entire telephone directory for Cape Breton County in 1891. Hills Road, extending inland to the Louisbourg Highway from Hillside Road, was once the site of many farms. There were 9 families in the late 1800s, but many moved to Sydney to work at the steel plant, leaving only the McGuinness family, whose home you can see in this slide. In the late 1800s, there was a carriage shop run by John Ferguson on the property now owned by Morris Ross. Today, Mr. Ross operates a store and is involved in a number of businesses on this site. A school on Hills Road, a log cabin heated by a fireplace, once operated at Michelson's Brook. Students later attended number 28 school on Hillside Road. Today, Hills Road has an expanding population due to many people building new homes in the last number of years. As we head eastward down the river, we arrive at what is considered the mid or central location of Mira River, Albert Bridge. When the French were in Louisbourg, they had a settlement at Albert Bridge. They used a small ferry to cross the river where the bridge stands today. This is why people refer to the community as Mira Ferry. When a swing bridge was constructed in 1855, the name was changed to Albert Bridge. The present bridge was built in 1970. In this slide, you will see Union Presbyterian Church. Considered a major landmark for the whole Mira area, the church was opened on August 5, 1857. It was called Union Church to unite the congregations from surrounding areas including Cow Bay or Port Morion, Marion Bridge and Catalone, where smaller churches had closed. It is the oldest still-standing Presbyterian church in Cape Breton. The church will seat 1,000 people. This beautiful church was well maintained throughout the years. The Roman Catholic Church in the community is St. Joseph's. Built on a hill overlooking the river near the end of Trout Brook Road in 1877, it has been greatly enlarged in the 1970s. Until 1902, priests from Grand Mira and Manitou were pastors here. From that time until now, the priest at Stella Maris Church in Louisbourg has also served St. Joseph's. The church has seating for 200 people, including many vacationers in the summer. Early settlers in the 1870s at Albert Bridge included the Burkes, MacDonalds, McMillans, McCaulays, McVickers, and McKinnons. The first postmaster, when mail service started in 1863, was Thomas Burke. Neil McCush and his wife Christine, shown in this slide, later ran the post office for 35 years. They lived across from where the fire hall stands today. This post office also served Brickyard Road. Union School, located across from the Shell station on this site, served the community for many years until being closed in 1958. In this slide, you see the students and teacher of Union School, taken in the 1920s. Near the site of the present Shell station was a hotel owned by William Burke, in use in the early 1900s. It was a popular stopover for travelers from Sydney to Louisbourg. Mr. Burke's daughter married a man named Spain, who took over the family business. In this slide, you will see the site of what was once Spain's Pavilion. For a 50 cents admission, people for many miles around could come to a Friday night dance. Oh, long drink on a mountain. Today in Albert Bridge, business and organizations are successful due to its location. Sidney Howard, a local woodcarver who lives just outside the community towards Sydney, has had his fine work shown at Expo 86. Burke's campsite, fronting on the Mira River, has been a popular choice by campers for many years. Located close to the bridge is Burke's Store. In 1918, Burke's Store was opened by two ladies, Mrs. Chisholm and Mrs. Marr. Originally a tea room and grocery store, it was taken over by their nephew, William Burke, in 1936, and he operated it for 43 years. Mr. Wilfred Wick Berrigan bought the store from Mr. Burke. Across the road from Burke's Store is the home of the family of the late Pat Burke. He and his wife have served our school well, being janitors since 1959. As we drive across the bridge, we come to Mullen Shell. First built in 1955, it has had a number of owners. The present owners, the Mullins family, also have a grocery store as part of their business. The Albert Bridge Fire Hall was built in 1977 when the department was newly organized. The first chief was Bert Savage. The fire hall expanded under Chief Harold Wadden in 1983 to include recreation facilities for community groups. It also has a very active ladies' auxiliary. Albert Bridge, being halfway between Sydney and Louisbourg, is probably the most central location of the Mira area. There is a choice of 2 roads each to Mira Gut and Marion Bridge. Its central location is the reason why it has been for many years the site of the Mira Ferry Community Fair. Albert Bridge was and will be an important Mira River community. Continuing our journey down the river, we come to Horns Road. The name Horns Road comes from the early settler Simeon Horn. Early settlers received land through grants. In 1802, Mr. Horn received a grant to his property. The Spencer grant over 1,000 acres started at Black Brook and went to Mira Bay. The original Horns Road was 1/2 mile above the present one, its beginning shown in this slide. The road was abandoned a number of years ago as a busy part of Horns Road. There were 2 school sections. On the Horns Road section, the first school was on the Owens property, now owned by Rudy Mrazek. The second was in the IOGT Hall, later sold to Mr. Mrazek, and was moved to the property of Franklin McNeil. At the Mira Gut end of Horns Road, the first school was built in 1866, about a mile up the road from Mira Gut. The second school, built in 1919, was closed in 1958 and was moved to be converted into a home by Mr. Ernest Weisner. The people made a living by farming, fishing, lumbering, and the sand and gravel business. Sawmills were and still are a source of employment for some people on Horns Road, particularly the Mrazek and McKeegan families. Almost halfway up Horns Road is the end of Broughton Road. Broughton was once the site of a mine, office buildings, hotels, and a number of homes. Broughton Road has a number of new homes on it today. A forge once operated by the Spencer family was on the corner of Broughton and Horns Road. Just past the Broughton Road stands the Mira Bay Baptist Church. Built in 1870, it was originally located in Mira Gut, where the cemetery is located today. The church served the area until the 1960s, and today it is open in the summer months. Early families were the Horns, MacDonalds, Spencers, Owens, Morrisons, Fergusons, and McGinnis. The Sylvan Hall was built in 1895 by the Sons of Temperance, who opposed the drinking of alcohol. It is now used as a community hall. The word Sylvan means grove of green woods. The Mira Gut Women's Institute meet here once a month. Horns Road was once the site of Horns Campsite, a popular camping area until the 1970s. It was operated by the family of Kendall Horn. Today, Horns Road is served by Charlie Brown's store year-round. The store was built in 1976 and is now operated by the Carabin family. H.W. Phillips Limited, a heavy equipment and gravel trucking company, is based on Horns Road, owned by Mr. Harold Phillips. In the past number of years, Horns Road has become an area where a number of families have chosen to live, many building new homes in this area. At one time, one of the busiest parts of the whole Mira area was Mira Gut. Located at the mouth of the river where it meets the Atlantic Ocean, again its history begins with the French at Louisbourg. Timber was cut here to construct crude huts, and the French cut a road to here from Louisbourg and from Mira Gut to Albert Bridge, known as the French Road. Early settlers were Acadian, but later Loyalists arrived, and one of the first, John Spencer, in 1786. Charles Martel was the first postmaster, and his family built many early sailing vessels on this river. His grandson, young S. Martel, was postmaster and operated a store in 1915. In this slide, you will see the price list of articles. Mackenzie's store, which once had an ice cream parlor, was situated next to Martel's, close to the home seen in this slide. In the 1800s, Scottish families, the Mackenzies, MacDonalds, McQueens, and Fergusons, and others arrived. Other families, like the Phillips and Nichols, arrived from Margaree. As was mentioned, Captain Joseph Phillips and Wesley Nichol operated a shipping line on Mira River. The first school was built in 1866, the second next to the Baptist Church. There was also a school at nearby Round Island. A popular gathering place was Kenwood, a dance hall which once stood overlooking Mira Bay, seen here at Mira Gut. In operation until the 1960s, it was owned by the Mackenzie family. He brought my letter back. She wrote upon it. Mira Bay Baptist Cemetery, once the site of a church, was begun in 1838. Mira Gut was serviced by the Round Island Mutual Telephone Company. Just imagine for a moment the amount of activity in Mira Gut in the area where the bridge is today. In the early 1900s, passengers and freight trains traveled through the Mira Gut station from early morning until late at night. Phillips and Nichol boats would meet the trains and transport freight, passengers, and mail upriver. Stores would be busy with travelers going and coming. Sometimes the steam locomotives would take carloads of sand, which were loaded by steam shovels or trucks. Rails ran along the beach for these cars close to Martel's store. Steamers brought wooden posts or pit props for Cape Breton mines down the river, also bricks, and these were loaded on railway cars. Phillips and Nichol Company also owned in Mira Gut one of the largest sawmills in the area. In the summertime until the 1930s, the Mira station was active with picnic goers. The train left Sydney at 8 in the morning, arrived at Mira Gut about 2 hours later, and there passengers would meet the riverboats. The railway in itself is a story. The first railway, built in 1879, was the Gisborne, a narrow-gauge railway which ran from reserve mines to Louisbourg. A high iron bridge seen in this slide was constructed about 400 meters above the present highway bridge. Rails would be hauled from the mouth of the river by oxen to where the railway was constructed. It was decided a wider track was needed, and the old railway was dismantled in 1893 and 95. The bridge was removed in 1914.
You've heard lots of stories about lots of trains, big eight-wheelers.
The replacement railway was called the Sydney and Louisbourg, S&L, and the first run was completed when a locomotive pulled a trainload of coal into Louisbourg Station from Sydney in September 1895. After carrying thousands of passengers and millions of tons of coal, the Mira station closed on March 26, 1960, with Mr. Alex Ferguson serving as station master for 44 years.
She'd leave Louisburg Station by 6:05.
The railway was not without tragedy. On April 14, 1903, engine number 62, hauling a load of empty coal cars from Louisburg, plunged through an open drawbridge into the Mira River.
Well, they gave Jim his orders down at Louisburg Station.
The engineer, Jim Parsons, caught in the engine as it plunged into the river, died in that tragedy. The engine, however, was recovered by putting rails under it on the river bottom and hauling it ashore. It was rebuilt and used another 30 years. In this slide you see a picture of Alex McCush, a 21-year-old killed in another S&L accident near Louisburg in 1909.
They were going down grade, making 90 miles an hour when the whistle broke into street.
As we cross the river at Mira Gut, let us turn right to follow the south shore of the river to Brickyard Road. The name Brickyard comes from the old French brickyard about 5 kilometers down the road from Albert Bridge. Bricks could be easily made from the fire clay found along the river bank. This began in 1727, and bricks were made off and on for almost 200 years. Various owners operated the brickyard until 1900, when the Mira Brick Company was formed. In this slide you see the site of the tall stack that was once used. At one time, as many as 15,000 bricks could be made at a time. Before closing in 1922, Mira bricks were used in the construction of such buildings as Argyle School and St. Andrew's Church in Sydney. In 1965, the provincial government bought the land for the Mira Provincial Park for camping, swimming, and picnics, this being the location of the old brickyard. St. Joseph's Church Cemetery is located on the grounds of the park. The first schoolhouse was constructed in 1874, destroyed by fire, rebuilt in 1880, again destroyed by fire in 1895. A new school built in 1897 was replaced by another new one in 1906. The last one cost an amazing $140. The Mira Telephone Company serviced Brickyard Road with 17 to 22 people on the line. Mrs. Flora Phillips at Mira Gut was operator. In the early 1900s, families on Brickyard Road were Burns, Fergusons, Macaulays, Lamons, McClellans, Mackenzies, and others. Electricity came to the Brickyard Road and other areas in the 1940s. Lumbering and heavy equipment are businesses operated by the Ferguson family today on the Brickyard Road. As we cross the Louisburg Highway at Albert Bridge, we continue on the south shore of the river to Trout Brook Road. Our students live along this road about halfway to Merriam Bridge. As we have mentioned, Mr. Lou Petrie owned a steamboat on the Mira. The boat picked up passengers from the train at Mira Gut and took them to Camp Kilcare. In the early 1900s, Mr. Petrie owned this area at Sangaree. It had a beautiful hotel named Mayflower, which was open year-round. The hotel had a bar and a bowling alley in the basement, the site you see in this slide. As cars became plentiful, Camp Kilcare slowly lost business, and vacationers went to other areas. Today, the Sangaree area is the location of the St. Agnes of New Waterford Roman Catholic Church camp, as well as a number of year-round residences and summer cottages. Another camp, this one owned by the Presbytery of Cape Breton, is located close to St. Joseph's Church at the end of Trout Brook Road. It was once a health camp for underprivileged children and is called Camp MacLeod. Some early families on Trout Brook Road were MacDonalds, Morrisons, Lamons, MacLeods, McNeils, and others. At one time, there was a well-used road from Trout Brook towards Catalone called the New Boston Road. The New Boston Road now has a different route, but the old road is still present and rarely used. The New Boston Road was quite populated at one time with a school and Masonic Hall. In this slide you see the teacher, Mrs. Flo McMillan, later a teacher at Albert Bridge in front of the old New Boston School. As the New Boston Road extended to the Louisburg Highway, another settlement called New Boston developed. Lumbering is still carried out in New Boston as sawmills were operated by many families over the years. As we drive through New Boston, we arrive at Catalone. Catalone gets its name from Gédéon de Catalone, a French soldier and engineer who was in charge of building defenses at Louisburg. He had land around what is now Catalone Lake named after him. The French once lived along the lake. Legend has it that treasure was buried by the French on the big island of Catalone Lake. Large Indian settlements could also be found here hundreds of years ago. In later years, horse racing was popular on Catalone Lake. Early Scottish settlers arrived in the 1820s and 30s. People with names like MacDonald, McPhersons, Macaulay, and McVicker lived a pioneer life with log homes that had open fireplaces and made a living from the land. The church was very important to the people of Catalone. Starting in 1934, a minister traveled from Sydney to preach at Catalone in someone's home or outside. A church was built in 1838, but many Catalone Presbyterians attended Union Church in Mira Ferry after it was built in 1857. Later, a building constructed close to the cemetery had a school on the ground floor, church services upstairs, and was also used as the Orange Lodge. This was destroyed by fire in 1925. A large, beautiful church was then built on the road leading to Manitou, and then a United Church across the road from the old two-story church and school. The first school was located in the middle of where that cemetery is today. It had a one-room and was replaced by the two-story building. In 1925, a new school was built and had stood on this site for many years until being moved to Louisburg in 1987 to be used as a business establishment. Margaret McVicker School, constructed in 1966, replaced this school and for the past number of years has grades primary to 3 from the same area that Albert Bridge School serves. Shortly after the settlers arrived, one of the settlers died and a cemetery was started. They cut through the forest for 3 miles to find a spot close to water at Catalone Lake and buried her close to its shore. In 1837, this was called Lock End Cemetery. After being greatly enlarged, the cemetery is still used today. The early pioneers had a number of services that they needed. Near the S&L railway trestle was the grist mill where settlers ground the grain. A blacksmith's forge was necessary for making horseshoes and shoeing horses and repairs to farm equipment. The forge was located where Stonewall Campground is today and operated by a Mr. Macaulay. The first mail was carried along footpaths from Sydney to Louisburg. Later, mail came by train. The first post office was in the home of John Allen MacDonald. Rural delivery now takes place with mail picked up in Louisburg. In 1894, a man named Alex R. MacDonald suffered injuries in a mine accident and he was no longer able to return to his work. He opened a store and later enlarged it with the top floor used for a community hall. In 1945, Mr. MacDonald died, and his foster son, Ernie Bishop, took over the business. Mr. MacDonald's popularity is shown by the large attendance at his funeral, as seen in this slide. Mr. MacDonald was county councillor for 40 years and Mr. Bishop continued in this position until he himself died in 1983. Mr. Bishop at one time was county warden. After Mr. Bishop died, he was succeeded as councillor by Mr. Allen Hall, a teacher at Manitou. A very popular and capable representative, Mr. Hall became deputy warden of Cape Breton County in 1988. However, in 1989, he died quite suddenly at an early age. And for only the third time this century, the Catalone area lost a distinguished councillor who was still serving the people at the time of his death. Mr. Bishop's brother, Edgar, also owned a store, now operated by Roy McCumber. The store was originally on the Terra Nova Road, or the old Louisburg Road as it was known. A McLean lady married a man by the name of Mr. Crummy, and she hoped to operate a tea room. In the hopes of better business, she had the building moved to its present location in 1939. Edgar Bishop operated the business from 1947 as a store until he moved to England in the early 1970s. He then sold the store to Mr. Roy McCumber, who ran the business for a number of years. A man named Alex H. McCauley had one of his legs amputated in an accident in the United States. He opened a store seen in this slide, later being the location of the first telephone in Catalone. It was also the site of the post office for a time, and also had a hand-operated gasoline pump. The store was later operated by Margaret McIntyre and has since closed. Many could recall Mrs. McIntyre being open long hours to help the people of Catalone or the traveling public. The railway also played a part in the history of Catalone. As mentioned, mail was dropped off and the S&L made regular runs through the community on its way to Louisburg. The concrete of the trestles over the old road is still visible, as was a part of the old trestle at Catalone Lake until the 1980s. In this slide you will see the old station after it was abandoned in the 1950s. Used as a meeting place for community groups and social events, the Catalone Recreation Center was opened in October 1978. It is a valuable part of the Catalone community today. Like many communities where we live, Catalone's population is growing steadily. In 1956, the population was 230 and had grown to almost 1,000 by 1986. As we leave Catalone, we head down the Louisburg Highway to the Louisburg town limits to Big Lorraine, another historic area in the Terra Nova or Old Louisburg Road. We have seen through our slides that the people of our area, you, your parents, and your ancestors, have much to be proud of. Our communities were built on the pioneer spirit of hard work and cooperation. Through this, they have survived and thrived to this day. We should always be proud of our country roads.
You've heard lots of stories about lots of trains, Big eight-wheelers and hobos freight train, that old 97 run off that railroad line. Now I'll tell you about a lady that's been heavy on my mind. She's the old S&L, that Sydney and Lewisburg line. You can tell when she was coming, you could hear that whistle whine. She's a great old lady, that Sydney and Lewisburg line. She'd leave Lewisburg station about 6:05. The engineer said we gotta be there on time. We got people in Mira that's gotta be in Big Lace Bay. So shovel that coal, boy, give me some steam. I wanna hear that whine, hear her whistle scream. Tell the people at the S&L running one more time. She's the old S&L, it's a Sydney and Lewisburg line. You could tell when she was coming, you could hear that whistle whine. She was a great old lady, that Sydney and Lewisburg line. Yeah, she's a great old lady, that Sydney and Lewisburg line. Well, they gave Jim his orders down at Lewisburg station. Said, Jim, you're way behind time. This is not 97, boy, it's the old S&L. You must put her down to Mira on time. He turned around and said to his black greasy fireman, shovel on a little more coal. And when we cross that gutted Catalone, boy, just watch the S&L start to roll. They were going down grade, making 90 miles an hour, when the whistle broke into a scream. He was found in the wreck with his hands on the throttle. He was scalded to death by the steam. It's a mighty rough road from Lewisburg to Mira, in a line on a 3-mile grade. It was on that grade that he lost his air brakes. You can see what a jump he made. Now come all you ladies, you best take warning from this time on and learn. Never speak harsh words to your true love or husband. He'll leave you and never return. Yes, he'll leave you and never return.